All right. Hey everyone. Just another example of me walking through a question using these these questions that you can ask yourself. Again, if you didn't watch the first video I made, basically I just tried to think when I see a question, what are the steps that I tend to go through intuitively in order to get to a solution, and I tried to explicitly write them out because I thought that could be helpful for people that are struggling on where to even start when answering a question or writing a query. So it's these four ones, and then for specific situations, I added an extra two. You could add more of these because no query is going to be the same, but let's just look at these four questions, and I'll add this document up to ELC as well, so you can look over the details and what I mean by each of these. So I've copied these and I've put them in MySQL Workbench, so those are right here. And then I have a question here. This was a question that could have been on the quiz that you just took on Wednesday, February 19th. But it was in the pool of questions, but I didn't give it to you. But it's a good difficulty level and lets us walk through these questions in a good way, I think. So let's just read the question, try to understand it, and let's ask ourselves these questions and see if we can get through it. So it's asking which countries of offices, or each office has a country that it's in. And sometimes offices are in the same country. So which countries of offices has the highest number of customers that are not from the same country as the office? In other words, the country for the office and the country for the customer are not the same. For example, you could have an office in the United States, but the customers that have done work through the employees in that office, their customers could be in another country like Australia or something like that. So it's wanting to know which country with the offices has the highest number. So let's start off with this first question. What data do I need and which tables is it in? So we have right here that we're talking about the countries of offices. So that pretty obviously that means we're probably going to be looking at offices. So you come in here and you notice that offices has a country attribute. And if you're ever unsure of what it really looks like, just write a select star from whatever table you want to look at just before you even start, just to get an idea of what data is actually in here. And I'm off campus, so this is running a little slow. There we go. So you can see there's offices, the city they're in and everything, but we're interested in the country. You can see sometimes the country is repeating, but we have different countries for the offices here. So we need country in, I'll just put from offices. It's asking, has the highest number of customers, so we need customers in some way. So we have offices here, it's connected to employees here, but this doesn't have anything about the actual customers in this table. So we just go down the chain of what's connected. And then we see here we have customers, we have the customer number, so we can identify a unique customer here. So let's just put customer number from customer, so we know we need that data. But note that we have to get to it through the employees table. Just because so let's just go to the end of the question. Highest number of customers that are not from the same country as the office. So it's implying that customers have a country and also offices have a country, and we're trying to see the number when they are not the same as each other. So that's also implying that customers have a country, and if you look through the customers table, you can see they also have a column called country. So let's just finish this out. Country from customer. What I mean by here is getting to it through employees. Even though the data we need is only in the offices table and in the customers table, because they aren't directly linked together by a relationship, we need to include any tables that allow us to complete the chain between offices and customers. So offices codes are shared between here, and then between employees we have the foreign key of sales rep employee number that aligns with the primary key of employee number here. And I'll upload the sheet, but if you just look at how I explain this, I literally start just by joining all the tables with a select star. I don't even, when I usually write a query, I'm not too concerned with getting the select statement perfect at the beginning. I just want to get the tables that I'm working with in there. So offices, then we need to, join the other tables. So we said we need to get to the customer table, but first we have to get to it through employees. So let's join employees. We call it E on O dot, looks like it's office code is the primary key. So office code equals, and if you forget what the primary key or foreign key is, just look back here, and that's the key, and then foreign keys are always in red, either filled out red, or if you zoom in, you can see that's also red. That just means it could be null potentially. If it's filled in, that means it's not null. So office code equals E dot office code. Let's join. So that's still offices. We haven't got to the customer data yet, so let's join that in there. Customer C on C dot. If you remember going back here, it's a sales rep employee number. Number equals E dot employee number. So once you get a join, you have all the tables that you care about. I literally just look at it and I want to make sure I did it right. For example, right here I'm getting an error, so that's pretty common. You just want to make sure that before you start writing anything in select and everything else, that your base query actually works. So here you can see the office data is being repeated multiple times. What relates to this next question I ask is, what does a row represent in the joined results? And this is just important in my head to understand when I'm doing functions like a count or a sum, and I'm doing it on these rows, what is it that I'm actually counting, or what is it that I'm actually summing? So you can see each row doesn't represent a unique office because that's repeating multiple times, and it's because we're doing these joins. So the easiest way to tell that is just look at the data model, and whenever you join a table, like let's just ignore customers for example, let's say we just joined offices and employees, or even just pretend we just selected everything from office. If we did a select star from offices, every row in that result would represent an office. Star from offices. It's going slow. I'm off campus, so sorry. So each row represents an office. So for example, if we did count star from offices, what it's counting is offices. It's counting that. But as soon as we do a join to a new table, join employees, let me just copy this. And this may be overly simple. You may just skip ahead in the video if this is dumb to you, but I'm just trying to get the point across of how important it is to understand what a row in a result set represents. Oops. So then let's say we have the offices and employees and we're joining them together. No longer does each row represent a specific office uniquely. It has the office data in there, it's just repeating, but each row represents a unique employee. And this is because, as we look back here, there are more employees than offices. So that means whenever we do a count, like let's say we change this into a, I'm just going to copy it so I have the result from it. If we do a count star now with the join, it's a much higher number than the offices because we're now counting every row, and each row represents an employee. So when we do a count on anything, even if it is something like office, like o.office code, it's still 23. That to me, understanding that is, to me at least, is incredibly important. It's because I understand that in this query, because I have offices and employees, because there are more employees than offices, because of this relationship, each row now represents an employee. But then we join it to customers. So if we did that, this means that no longer does it represent it doesn't represent employees anymore, this result set, because the employees, you see here the employee is repeating multiple times. This represents now customers, because if you go back here, there are more customers than there are employees. So again, if we were to do this and we were to do a count, even if we were to do a count on something like employee number, because each row represents a customer, that's going to give us a number that's bigger than the actual number of employees. It's going to just count the number of customers that have an employee in this case. So that was a long time to go over this. Hopefully, if that was boring, just skip it. But each row in this query that we've written, I'm just going to go ahead and delete all this because that was just to make a point. Each row represents a customer. So, cool. That doesn't change what we write out, it just changes, that just makes sure we understand what we've just written. Step 3. So figure out each thing you want in the select statement and if it is an attribute or a group or the thing you want to group by on. So when I say attribute of a group, I explain it in this document that I'll upload. By attributes of a group, I mean, are you taking a sum, count, average, min, or max of something? And if so, that's an attribute of the group. In this case, we have the countries or the offices. So in the select statement, we're gonna want the country. So we'll just leave that aside right now. But it's not asking us to count them or anything. So which countries of offices has the highest number of customers? So it's asking for the number of customers. So that means it's asking for a count. And don't even worry about the column name is or anything like. Don't worry about what specific column you're going to be counting or whatever. Just say you want a count of what the customers are. And these are attributes, if I can spell, of a group. So you want the number of customers that are not from the same country as the office. So not from the same country as the office, that's telling us something that what type of customer we want to count. We're not counting all the customers, we're only counting those that have a different country from the office country. So that's not a separate thing in the select statement. We just want the number of customers. This is just telling us what that number should be. So really it's only two things that we want. we want a country of the offices, and there's attributes of a group. So we figured out all the attributes of the group, and almost always what's left over is what we're going to be grouping by. Essentially, we want to find whatever we want to find out information about is what we're grouping by. We want to find out information of the number of certain types of customers in each of these countries, or office countries. So that's what we're wanting to group by. Whereas the attributes of a group, we're not going to group by customers because that's what we're counting. That's the attribute of the group. So if you come back in here, we can just add that first. We are grouping by countries. And if you remember, there's two different types of countries. We go back all the way here. There's country from offices and country from customer. So let's say we just have, just to show you the error you're probably going to get if you don't remember that. Country and field list is ambiguous. So oftentimes I've said it doesn't really matter which one you specify, but in this case we care about the offices in the country, so we need to say we want o.country, because that's going to entirely change what we want. So we can run that, make sure it's working. That's our first piece of data. Going slow, but there we are. We've grouped by the country, but we don't really have any data about them yet. And then we have the attributes of those groups that we are wanting. So then we're doing a count. And we're doing a count of what? We're doing a count of customers, and we're going to filter those customers later, but we'll get to that in step 4. So if you remember, this relates back to what does each row represent? Each row represents a customer. So if we actually just do count star, we are going to be fine, because each row, when we do count star, we're counting each row, and each row represents a customer. So we are totally fine here to just use count star. If you want, you could do something like it's customer number. Get rid of the space. And that'll work too. I'll just keep it in so you can see it's the exact same thing. But just understanding what star or what customer number is even counting, to me, that's why it's important to consider number 2, what each row represents. So we have that. Let's just make sure our query runs at this point. So we have our countries, and we're counting, what we're counting right now are the number of customers associated. And remember, this isn't the country the customer from, this is O country, so this is for customers associated with offices in the United States. There's 39 of them. And you can see these columns are the same, because like I said, they are counting the same thing, because we're counting customers. Okay, so that's number 3. Then let's move on to question 4. If it is asking you to filter on something, is it an attribute of specific rows before you group, or it is an attribute of the group? So let's first just look at what are we actually filtering on. So which countries of offices have the highest number of customers that are not from the same country as the office? So we're only wanting to count, so we have a count of customers, but we're only wanting to count those that are not from the same country as the office. In other words, we're wanting to change the number that we are counting. Whether or not a customer is from the same country as the office is something before we group. And if that's not intuitive, so the answer is that it goes in the where clause. If that's not intuitive, just if you even try to do it after you've made a group, it won't work. You'd have to do something like having O.country not equal to the customer's country, so C.country. except we've already grouped these. We've grouped on O country, so C country just doesn't even exist anymore. If we run this, this shouldn't even work. Unknown column C country in having clause. We know this column exists, but because we haven't grouped by it, and because C.country isn't an attribute of a group, an attribute of a group is something that we're doing functions with, you just can't put it in the having clause. It's something that we want to filter before then. So one way is just put it there and see that it doesn't work, but conceptually, just you think about the question, and we're wanting to count customers that are not from the same country as the office. So we start counting once we make a group. So we want to get rid of them before we start counting. So therefore it should come before the group by. So what we're saying here is we only want to count customers if their country, so what we just wrote before, just in the where, but we'll start with the customer's country. So only if the customer's country, which is C.country, is not equal to, you could also do that, that also works, same thing, isn't equal to the office's country. So it's only including those where the countries are not the same. And then once those are out of it, it's going to group them together and then create a count of it. So we run that, make sure it works. It's running, gives us some results. And you can see it's asking which country or countries the office has the highest number of customers that are not from the same country as the office. There's only a few results here. There's only a few countries. You can just see that 17 is the highest number, so France is the answer. If there were a ton, if it was like hundreds of rows and you didn't want to like scroll through and find out which one is the highest, the easiest way is to just do an order by. Just do an order by count star. Why don't we just do descending so the highest ends up being on the top. Run that again. And you can see at the top is France. So the answer is France. So hopefully this helps you think through. Sometimes I might go a little out of order of these, but just in me trying to explicitly write out what it is I'm doing here. I guess I forgot to write out the things here. So we're wanting to filter on O country and C country, which are attributes of rows before we group. Hopefully this helps you just consider how to go through a query. Try running, if you think this is helpful, try running through these steps on another question and see if it helps you get the right answer or not. But like I said in the other video, more than trying to memorize a specific set of steps, I think SQL is a language, and it's just like learning Spanish or Italian or whatever. Just the more you speak it, the better you get at it. The more you practice, the more writing out stuff like this just becomes intuitive. Like when I write out queries, I'm usually not, I don't write this out and actually write down the answers to them. I'm usually just doing this all in my head without even realizing it usually. So to start off, it might be useful to write them out, but if you just keep practicing, after a long enough amount of time, it should start to just become second nature. It just takes a whole lot of practice. This is hard stuff. So hopefully that helps. And if these are useful, I might do a few more of them. If not, well, at least I tried. So, hope you have a good day. See ya.